Hello there, kia ora. I'm really starting to think that Christopher Luxon's lack of political experience might be a bit of a hindrance in his job. Yesterday on the Tiles, he came out in general support of fighting woke DEI hires that was floated by Winston in one of his imported culture war brain fades. He considered well-being woke, according to what he said to the press, and said he was putting their least woke MP onto fixing things, Judith Collins. Collins doesn't believe in woke and would never stoop to parading something like a person's heritage or connections to get a job. By the way, her husband is Samoan, so talofa, and she would never virtue signal in any way, by visiting a church to pray for a photo op before an election to appeal to Christian conservatives. During the Tile talk, the Prime Minister reiterated that he simply wanted to make sure that the government he ran was a meritocracy and that government workers were employed on merit. Now, that doesn't exactly not happen. I mean, the law that they're looking at changing, the one that New Zealand first voted in originally in support, basically is a broader understanding of representation for communities when it comes to hiring people, and it takes on board a wider range of experiences as part of the consideration. But that's woke. So instead, he wants to ask an MP who promoted the business her husband was a director of, the MP who leaked private information about a private citizen to right-wing blogger Cameron Slater, the MP who Winston claimed approached him in 2014 with a deal to form a coalition with her as leader if they agreed to roll John Key, to the MP that he's asked to look at the wokeness on display and help reshape the public service sector into a meritocracy. And of course, his party, it leads by example. They're all there, totally based on merit, and nothing like nepotism or wokeness getting in the way for a government that's clearly speaking to New Zealanders right now from a Prime Minister that they clearly respect. But he needs to hand this over to Collins because he can't actually do it. You see, Christopher Luxon is too woke. After all, he was the one who gave safe seats to men during the general election, then said he really wanted to have half the caucus being women. And that's incredibly woke. And look, I get why he chose Collins. It's tough to pick who would be best to fill that role of making sure public servants aren't too woke, based purely on merit. I mean, you wouldn't want someone too woke, and totally pick someone based on merit is a little difficult sometimes. It must have been a really difficult choice, since clearly all the MPs are there based purely on being meritorious people, like the soon-to-be Deputy Prime Minister, who Snapchatted children, who's avoided answering questions about what he knew about convicted child abuser Tim Jago, the man behind the ongoing drama that's the new school Gloop program, who for some reason is the Associate Minister of Education. Or Andrew Bailey, who got drunk and abused a former defence worker at a winery before an animated discussion made him self-demote before running away to Mount Everest. He could have gone for Nepo baby Todd McClay. He can't be woke after all. He voted against marriage equality, safe abortion access and stopping conversion therapy. And as Trade Minister, he was yelling racist insults in Parliament at MPs born overseas. So that's not woke. But he does have a habit of rabbiting Chinese government lines, and you don't get much more woke than communism. Maybe he could have gone with Sam Uffindale. He's clearly there on merit, because everyone looked at the report on his brutal attack with a bed leg as a student that Luxon clearly released. Or maybe Deputy Speaker Barbara Kuriger, who is clearly meritorious and has never used her position as an MP to try to get her family out of a shitstorm with MPI for animal abuse. But I guess she got her role already as Deputy Speaker, based purely on merit. Maybe he needs to look at some of his newer MPs, like Tom Rutherford, whose mother is the Bay of Plenty National Party event manager and mentored by National Party stalwart Tony Ryle on how to be an MP in a safe seat. Maybe Ryan Hamilton, who was linked to conspiracy theories about fluoridation and COVID, calling mandates illegal, even after going to a resident and ratepayers sovereign citizen-aligned group meeting about 15-minute cities, where he sat in the audience while the conspiracy nutted issues arrest warrants to other councillors that were there, and then stood up at the end of the event after everyone had left and said, "Hey, I'm one of you." I mean, that's clearly not woke and sounds like the merits that we're seeing in the meritocracy Luxon's created. But he was a member of Destiny Church, and the Destiny Church do show up at more rainbow events than, Kid Amin, the winner of RuPaul's Drag Race. So that is pretty woke. Maybe someone like Greg Fleming. After all, he was campaigning against prostitution reform and civil union acts before he entered Parliament. But he also did some really woke stuff, like starting a charity working to help stem intergenerational poverty, and he gave his maiden speech in both Te Reo Māori and English. Maybe the former press secretary for Jenny Shipley and John Banks, Cameron Brewer, who called his victory in Upper Harbour a win for pale, stale males when he beat Labour's Venushi Walters. Maybe he could be considered there on merit. After all, he did once ban Rodney Hyde from wearing bright clothes in Newmarket when Hyde was the MP there. But he does use his social platforms to promote woke things like puppy adoption. If those puppies were adopted on merit and not how they looked, it might be a different matter. There's MPs there who have promoted tobacco and guns. One who was accused of killing people in Iraq that he refused to confirm or deny. It doesn't seem too meritorious. And, he's got a finance minister with a humanities degree. That definitely sounds woke. There's writer and pianist Paul Goldsmith, and he voted for legalizing same-sex marriage and abortion law reform, so way too woke. Stanford supported same-sex marriage, decriminalizing abortion, and legalized euthanasia, and believes man-made climate change is a thing, so way too woke. Finding the right person to look at woke hiring practices is clearly a very difficult tightrope to walk. Wanting a public service sector where people are there because they are the best people for the job is not a bad thing, and the law change that Winston is rallying against that he supported was designed to make sure the understanding of those roles was wider than before, with a more inclusive outlook on them. But instead of saying that, the Prime Minister falls down the trap laid by Peters and the press and starts going on about wokeism, which is both a nebulous term that means nothing to people with 2 brain cells and a dog whistle to people whose single brain cell is getting really lonely at this stage, which, based on recent polls, that attitude and that way of approaching things, it's not working out so well for his coalition partners. So what would make him think it would work for him? I guess that's what happens when you hire someone for a job based solely on being at the right place at the right time, and not on actual merit. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.